That's the book I'm reading right now, Hooked. But I took the cover and tore it and used it as a bookmark. Savage, right? So I'm a bookworm, and not ever since I was a child. I discovered reading around 10 years ago, but ever since then, my whole life excelled. I would be very motivated to start a business adventure and succeed in it. So if you're anything like me and you love the world of business and entrepreneurship, and you're looking for books that are not so boring that would make you think of dinner while reading them, this is my list of the 5 business books you should read in 2023. Trust me, you will absolutely love them, and they could potentially change your life. I know how naive that sounds. This happened to me. It doesn't have to happen to you. And it's not like you're gonna read a book and transform into a person immediately. It's a very long-term process. It took me months of reading until I actually felt an impact of a book that had on my personal and professional life. Even if it doesn't change your life, I'm pretty sure it's gonna leave a very positive impact and it will enhance your career. So let's get started. Let me ask you something. Who's the founder of Apple? Steve Jobs, right? What about Tesla? Elon Musk, you got it right. Microsoft. Bill Gates, yes. What about Nike? I didn't know either. His name is Phil Knight, and his story is one of the most inspiring stories in the business world that you have to read. Here's what I think of the book. I read it a while back, and somehow, magically, ever since then, I've been running. Maybe this was the mission of the whole book. Brainwash me into running. It's good for me anyway, it doesn't matter. So I read the book, and the business adventure that Phil Knight went through is something very entertaining, that's what I would say. Like, I wouldn't feel that there is a lot of financials involved or a lot of very deep business lessons per se, but there is the overall lesson, which is how he transformed from where he was to the fact that he made Nike what it is. So I definitely recommend this read. I was reading it and a few people came by and said, I love this book, I read it and it's so entertaining and I'm in the middle of it, and like it keeps you thinking and it keeps you entertained. I'm sure you're gonna finish the book in a very short amount of time because you're not gonna be able to stop reading. Steve Jobs, the legend who created the iPhone, right? Well, he did that, but the book shows how much of a jerk he was, and that's what I like about the book. It shows that Steve was just a human with flaws, and that's particularly why I'm very fond of reading it. I initially saw the movies, and it is very much more detailed if you dig into the book, so I highly recommend you start reading it. Actually, I saw 2 movies talking about how Steve Jobs became what he is, and the movies are entertaining per se, but the book digs into much more than that, shows a lot of conflict within Steve himself as a person and how he transformed. It's not a heroic story per se. It kind of also is. It's a very complex thing, but again, it was one of the most entertaining books that I read. So it will keep you going in terms of, you know, like it's like watching a movie, but for a very long time. So that's my sort of books that I like to read sometimes, especially on weekends when you're just relaxing, because it's a movie that you're reading. So I highly recommend this. If you work in the business world, actually if you work in the world, then one day or another you're going to be interested in investing. And when I say the word investment, who's the person that pops into your mind? Warren Buffett, right? Well, Warren Buffett says that this is the Bible of investing, that this book has transformed his life and changed him to become who he is today, one of the best investors of all time. I've personally read this book, and ever since then, I've learned a lot about investment. I have an investment portfolio that gives me a good returns every year, and you learn the things that you don't expect to learn. Well, I thought of learning that, okay, that's the company that I should buy and then I should expect a return, but it also lets you learn how to, or at least that's what it did to me, it made me learn how to psychologically deal with an investment and see my investment portfolio fall to 20% in the negative and then go up to 10%. So these sort of things you don't learn except by experiment, but the book showcases you that this is the real world of investing, that it's not about day trading, or it's not about just buying a stock and selling it immediately, making a quick profit, which is what I love about this book. For this book, I bet you already read it. If you hadn't, it's like the children book of business. It's just a classic. Poor Dad, Rich Dad is something that every person has to read, and if you haven't read it, you need to read it, and it could really be a book that you read in a single day. And the beauty of it if there is a one word that would describe why I advise you to read this book, that is perspective. The way he's pitching his poor dad and his rich dad and everything around that shows in the real world how unfair the business world is. So when you're starting your startup and you find your friend with a startup just climbing ranks very quickly and they raised millions, or your career being surpassed by another colleague who just also became a manager, you get to read this book and to see that life is not fair, but it's all about the end game. That there is a process and there is a journey, and this is what I really like about this book. You need to read it. This is non-debatable. Go read it. Actually, read it right now. Do it. My fifth business book recommendation is not a business book. It's Leonardo da Vinci. This book was written by the same person who wrote Steve Jobs' the book, but it shows Leonardo da Vinci as a human being and how creative of a mind he is. If there is one sentence that I would focus on, is the fact that he did not belong to the era that he was living in. And that shows you a level of creativity that doesn't exist nowadays, which really lured me into reading more and more about him. I would bet you that there is some things, not just something, some things that you don't know about Leonardo da Vinci and that you would learn more about it when you read the book. It shows a mind that doesn't belong to the era and that you definitely have to read this book. The reason why I'm ending with this book recommendation of Leonardo da Vinci is the fact that I want you to know that if you know what Leonardo da Vinci is, the more you read about this person, you're going to realize you know nothing. And that's the reality of the business world. The more you think you know, the less you actually know. You're always going to be surprised. There are tons of other books like Crush It, 0 to 1, The Blue Ocean Strategies, The Lean Startups that I would recommend. But for this year, I would like you to start with these because they transformed me as a person, and I would advise these out of personal experience. You might have another opinion, but that's mine. They're worth every moment spent on them. I've transformed from a paycheck to paycheck person to someone who's freelancing and who's having a lot of income streams, making at least a six-figure a year, and traveling all around the world. Right now I'm in Spain. I can't tell you where I'll be in a few years. So if I had to say one thing that led to where I am today, I would definitely say reading is the thing. So go ahead and order them. I won't put any affiliate links or anything. I'm sure you can find these at your local bookstore. And make sure to tell me what you think of them. Have a wonderful day.